Hi, my name is Kate O'Donnell, otherwise known as 90s drag queen Angel Valentine, which is really relevant to this film as we're going to be taking a dip back into Manchester's club and bar culture and how it kind of changed the city and how in some ways it kind of impacted England and the world. It was the cutting edge. Manchester gay scene and its vibrant pub culture was really ahead of its game, and I think it's something worth celebrating. But before then, we need to take a look back. Manchester gay bars in the 1960s operated behind closed doors and covered windows, deliberately secretive and often far away from the main streets, adding to the feeling of shame in what was already a closeted and then illegal act. These bars were mostly centred around the area of Canal Street, which later became the epicentre of Manchester's gay village. Some could only be entered via knock on the door, requiring a secret password to prove your gayness and be let in. Sexual liberation and establishing of a gay identity during the 1970s and 80s, many bars and clubs began shaking off the stigma and secrecy and became more visible.
Hi, my name's Will Smart. I first came out on the gay scene in around about 1974, and although I socialised on it, I moved very, very quickly to working behind the bar. And that was one of the ways that I was able to get a massive connection with so many different people. I'd come from a seaside resort, which was Southport, which had no gay scene. I'd been to London prior to that for a very, very short period. And then when arriving in Manchester, it was a Pandora's box in a way. I used to love to dance, and the music at the time was disco. And there was this youth, this abandonment, this fun I'd not experienced in my youth, early youth. I was just a really, really happy soul. When I was working in the clubs, I worked in Slingsby's, just off Deansgate. I worked in Sims. I worked in Heroes, which was a club that I worked in there for 3 years. Very much an underground club. Lots of things happened. We saw some amazing acts there because we used to, on a Wednesday night, they used to hire some of the best acts that were around. We saw Divine. I think Grace Jones came down once, if I remember rightly. We saw most of the sort of big stars that were gay that came into the city that nobody really knew about and the press didn't know. The atmosphere, it was just 4 hours of joy, and then you had to hit the street. And once you went out onto the street, you were faced with hostility if people saw it and they were aware of it. I used to hear horrible things happening, people being attacked on the way home. There were other places that on this side, I mean, you had the Rembrandt, you had the Union, which is behind me. Canal Street was completely different. It was quite derelict. If I'm going to be really honest, it was like a red light district. You used to see all the cars going around cruising and people stopping, like men in cars stopping to try and pick you up. And you'd be like, but I'm not a hooker. I always remember one guy saying to me, everybody has his price.
But still, the fight against prejudice continued, not only from the public, but also prominent vocal authority figures, including the then Chief Police Constable Anderton, who remarked the gay community were swirling in a human cesspit of their own making. Around the same time, the police raided Napoleon, citing a bylaw dating back to 1882, which prohibited dancing deemed indecent, profane, improper or suggestive. In other words, persons of the same sex dancing together. Despite Manchester's dark industrial past, from the mid-70s onwards, it proved itself to be a forward-thinking and progressive city. The City Council proved itself to be an advocate of gay rights and at the forefront of supporting a more inclusive LGBT scene, raising awareness and protest against Clause 28, the most memorable of which was in February 1988. Never Going Underground, a bold anti-Clause 28 demonstration supported by the gay community and public figures such as the actor Ian McKellen and Michael Cashman, opposing the ban on the promotion of homosexuality passed into law by the Conservative government, headed up by one Margaret Thatcher. The council also funded HIV awareness via its AIDS Working Party scheme, increasing visibility and enabling further liberalisation of the clubbing scene.
At first, only gays and IV drug users were being killed by AIDS.
The AIDS period, which really threw us back and made our lives extremely difficult. The way that we were treated like pariahs just was quite painful at times for many, many people. But we had to fight back. And it was a movement, and we'd done that. I mean, during the punk period, that we'd seen how they had fought politically for places like South Africa for most people's rights, but this was different, and we did become political, and we were waiting, and it was a fight against us, particularly the Tories, who had sort of like tried to decimate our community. That was painful to read and to watch and to listen to for any gay person, and anybody that wanted to come out. They couldn't come out. That's how they felt. And I met lots of young people at that time who said, I couldn't come out during that period. And I used to have friends saying to me, please, when you see me on the street, don't come screaming up to me. And I had to respect that, and I did. But I found that very, very painful. But we became more active politically. But then when Tony Blair came in and we hit the 1990s and it was the end of Clause 28, I mean, the cheer that went up. And the fact was that there was a recognition of the gay community. And I think society it was the time that we were ready for change.
The story of Queerchester can be traced right back to Manchester's earliest roots as a tolerant and forward-looking city. For example, the Labour Party in the 70s and 80s had adopted very strong non-discrimination policies and started implementing them with the city council. And they employed lesbian and gay officers to try and make sure that the service was delivered to its citizens without prejudice. I was lucky enough to join the Equality Group, as it was known, as one of the gay men's policy officers, and this was at the late 1980s, early 1990s, and you could really see things beginning to change in the city. It wasn't just the city council, it wasn't just the already established and very large gay scene on Canal Street, but there was also changes happening in the music. So, for example, the DJs, Mike Pickering and Graham Park and many others at the Hacienda were already bringing music back to Manchester that had come from the black and gay clubs of Detroit and Chicago via Ibiza, and was starting to be heard in the city on stations like Key 103 and Sunset, and there was a gradual creeping out of this music. But one of the first places that did start to play this exciting new house music was called the Number One Club in Central Street, and it was a very, very small place. You really had to look for it and go down the stairs into this quite small but very, very frenetic and lively club where DJs like Tim Lennox were playing this new radical house music, rave music from around the world. And it was probably the first gay club, certainly in Manchester, possibly even in the UK, that was really foraging towards trying to play this new, exciting music.
At the time, I had a business on Deansgate, and And I remember a friend coming in and saying, "You've got to come to the number one club." And I was like, "What's the number one club?" And he just said, "It's the most amazing place." And when I arrived, I got the shock of my life. It was small, it was dark, it was hot, it was sweaty, and I hadn't used substances before. And then a friend said to me, he says, "Try one of these." And I was like, "What is it?" And I was adamant I wasn't going to. But, well, after a few drinks, a few sherries, I decided to take one. And I always remember I was sat on the floor and this amazing record came on. And it just took me back to the 1970s. It took me back to the disco period, but it was dance music. And I just, all of a sudden, I just threw myself up and I thought, right, I'm going off. And my legs went from underneath me.
I came into the Manchester gay scene of the 1980s, and it was still slightly above ground, but it wasn't Canal Street, it wasn't Manto's, but it was still slightly above ground, but it was still terribly underground, and I loved the underground. I'm a big fan of it. But I came on the emerging 80s scene, loved it, and then I kind of took a break from it for some reason, I don't know why, and suddenly I was there I was in 1989 or something, going to some club called Strange Ways and thinking, oh my God, maybe that was a bit early actually, and thinking, oh my God, this is just amazing. So I spent a lot of time then just rediscovering what it all was and why it all was and how it really, not just gay, not just clubbing, not just the visibility of that, but how gays were far more visible. There was a lot more gays on the street. Me and Brian, my mate Brian, used to play a game called Follow the Clone, which was just follow the clone to the nearest bar, and there was loads of all that. Clones were slightly dying out then. There was this new, bolder approach, this more confident approach. It was people looked fuller, and they were out in daylight more. There was a lot of daylight going out gays and lesbians. And I would say just slightly before the queer thing happened, queer was emerging in and around that. And I just absolutely adored seeing this kind of almost Amsterdonian sense of what a northern town or a northern city by a canal could be. It was great the way all the cultures kind of came out. All the letters in the initialization, LGBTQ, they all seem to come out all at once, and a lot of that, I think, was to do with E, of course.
In 1992, Tanya Farman and Gavin Barlow formed Queer Up North. It became the forefront of LGBT arts, performance and events such as Mardi Gras and World AIDS Day, which up until then had only taken place in the capital. Gay and lesbian visibility was being highlighted on our TV screens with same-sex kisses on EastEnders and Brookside, out and proud musicians such as Bronski Beat and Peter Burns, magazines catering to gay readers, and our very own gay chat nights. The notion of a prominent gay scene in Manchester was growing, with gay nights opening at the number one club featuring Tim Lennox with their night, Spunk. There had been previous gay nights at the Hacienda, most notably Zumba and Gay Mondays, which took place on a, yes, you've guessed it, Monday. Then came one of the major pioneering club nights, Flesh, at the Hacienda, run by Paul Cons and Lucy Sher with DJ Kath McDermott. The Hacienda was Tony Wilson's factory cathedral where music, dancing and decadence were worshipped nightly. However, the club began facing financial pressures, and in October 1991, Hacienda's Flesh Night turned the ailing club into a bacchanalian ritual, mirroring the dance warehouses of New York, becoming a queer extravaganza. The Pink Pound coming to the rescue, and Manchester became dubbed Queerchester, dressing up and partying with performances from fetish fashion shows such as Miriam Byrne and Rubberwear to the outrageous drag act Deb Marilyn, who descended from the heavens on her very own Hacienda-style crucifix.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm one half of the design partnership, Murray & Verne. We do fetish fashion. Started in Manchester in the early to mid 80s. We were located on Whitworth Street and triangulated between the Hacienda and Canal Street. Then later on, obviously Manto came along, and then later on, post Hacienda, the Paradise factory. Yeah, in the early 90s, Marion, we did a fashion show at the Hacienda. It's a monthly gay night, queer night called Flesh. And yeah, quite an amazing night actually. And our slogan back then was clothes for fags and slags. The show was just full of all the shows we did in London as well, like shows we did everywhere, did them all up and down the country really. Full of our friends, our models were our friends, and we were in our own shows as well, so we dressed up, and some amazing personalities and characters in our shows. Really grateful to those people to this day. DJ Paula, who did the show and then went on to DJ afterwards. Then Wynne, who was a compere at Kinky Galinky at the time from London, and Roy, who was also a dancer and a model at Kinky Galinky, DJ Barbie and more Valance, and also Mike, Manumission. Manumission didn't exist then, so it was pretty much after that show decided he wanted to come to Manchester and start up Manumission, so that's where his birthplace was. And also the fantastic, the wonderful Wilfreda Beehive and Gina Love. I think they just were in our shows wearing their own creations, and just to be a part of it, which was fantastic really. I'm really happy that they decided to do that.
But what Flesh did was it drew, I'm going to use the word thousands of people to this city from Blackpool, from Leeds, from Sheffield, from Liverpool, from Blackpool, Birmingham and London. And it was a real queer fest. It was just amazing. And people, there were exhibitionists. I mean, you had every single style, from people with, the hankies in the left-hand pocket, the hankies in the right-hand pocket, glitter, lycra. And my business sort of went straight in and catered for that market. And it was wonderful to see people coming in and saying, I need an outfit for Flesh. I just need an outfit for Flesh. Well, we all had to get dressed up. But do you know what? What was really funny was that most of the people ended up taking most of their clothes off.
There was a buzz and excitement around Flesh at the Hacienda. It was amazing to be part of that scene. Loved seeing all the club kids running about, screaming, shouting, welcoming us with open arms and hearts. We really did have a great time there.
All of a sudden, young black gay men and women were coming out and being visible and being seen and being proud. And it was a tough time. I remember my black friends, they really had a tough time because religion came behind it. They were kicked out of the family and they had to come out and create new families on the gay scene.
With the demise of the Hacienda in 1997, it seemed as if the queer 24-hour party ideal was once again facing a setback. But in 1990, Carol Ainscough, a gay property developer, alongside her business partner Peter Dalton, bought a rundown building on Canal Street. They turned this derelict building into Manto, kick-starting a renaissance in the area and establishing a more visible gay presence. No more hiding behind blacked-out windows. Manto's design was bold and cutting-edge, with plate glass windows from pavement to roof, making gay people proudly visible for the first time on Canal Street. No more hiding. We were looking Manchester right in the face, defying the city to spoil our party. Visibility was literally everything.
Well, back in 1988, 1989, I was a student at Liverpool University at the time. I was living in Paris, and that's when I first realised that I was gay. Around that time, the gay scene in Manchester was pretty big and pretty successful, but it wasn't great. Most of the places that were there were harking back to the old days where you kind of knock on doors, and it was in the past. It was a bit sleazy, it was a bit dirty, it didn't make you feel great. But against the backdrop of that, we had a political situation. We had a chief constable who actively disliked gay people. We had a Conservative government who were bringing in anti-gay legislation. We also had the AIDS epidemic. Everything was happening at the same time. And against that backdrop, I came back from Paris with an idea that I wanted to open a bar that was for my generation, for people in the late teens, early 20s that didn't want to be treated like second-class citizens. They wanted to party like everybody else did, but in a place where they felt secure, where they could express themselves, and it was important to us where they could invite straight friends, family, and feel just as good as anybody else. The thing that was most striking about the bar when it was finished was it didn't look like a bar particularly. It didn't look like a bar, it certainly didn't look like a pub or anywhere where you would want to shy away from. There was nothing especially, there was no kind of major influence that made us design it in that way. But I just spent a year in Paris in cafe culture where everybody sits outside and is very visible, and it was that element of visibility that we incorporated into the design of the bar. So it was important to us right from the start really that we wanted to be more than just a bar that served drinks and entertained people. So we collaborated with a number of local artists, with Castlefield Gallery, with Queer Up North, to bring art installations, live events. We did fashion shows with people like Jackie Haynes, we did record launches. We wanted to be much more than just a bar. We wanted people out on the street. Again, like referencing my time in France, like we wanted people out on the street, sat drinking a cappuccino or sat chatting on a sunny afternoon. We didn't want them sat inside a smoky bar. So we were at the forefront, without doubt, in bringing forward the whole cafe culture scene that is everywhere now, not just in Manchester. We had to fight our corner with the City Council to put chairs on the street because at the time, 1991, there wasn't actually any legislation to permit it, and there was nothing within the kind of liquor licence or entertainment licence that either prevented it or allowed it. So we had to work with the City Council for something that was just as new for them as it was for Manchester.
Yeah, with the opening of Manto, that feels almost like not a catalyst, a figurehead for what was happening really, because it was like the Manto was big open glass windows, you could see in, you could see out, people went there to be seen, to be heard. Yeah, it felt like the end of the era of like, you know, the kickback against all of that repression from the authorities around queer culture. Yeah, I don't think Manchester's ever looked back. Queer culture continues to thrive and be a massive hub of creativity, so it's something really to be celebrated.
Manto's was a revolution when it opened. I mean, these clubs that used to be behind closed doors or downstairs or you had to knock on the door, Manto's was completely different. It was literally floor-to-ceiling windows, deliberately designed to be like this, very, very, very open. And it represented a new way of doing things. I'm not just in Manchester really, but even compared to places in London and the rest of Europe where places were gay places were a bit more hidden away.
Well, here we are, it's 2024 and we're at the On Bar, part of the Orange Nation from London. And it's amazing because this is actually Manto Bar, and I cannot believe it. I mean, I can still see the footprint, the memories as I'm walking through. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing just to see this place, and it's a pleasure to actually be here now.
So it's important to mention Carol involved, because without Carol, Carol Ainscoe, my partner, without Carol, none of this would have happened. I was a 22-year-old kid with no money, just a whole bunch of ideas. Carol was 10 years older. She was already a successful businesswoman. She was gay. The whole partnership came about more by chance than anything else. I bumped into her when I was on a trip home from Paris, and I just told her what was spinning around in my head, and unbelievably, within a week, we'd shaken hands on a deal to open the bar.
With its central location and huge open windows, it replaced the traditional secret gay bar, becoming a hub for art and fashion shows, rising DJs, and sometimes risque performances. Manto's was paving the way for a new, confident, positive and proud queer community, no longer content to exist only after a dark. Manto's sparked a revolution that was to become the gay village. Canal Street became the hub for various LGBT communities and gay-owned businesses for gay customers. The success of Manto's and the subsequent redevelopment of Canal Street created a thriving European-style cafe society, although sometimes lacking in sunshine. Alongside this, Canal Street started to offer support and facilities for the LGBT community. This LGBT in-your-face visibility, defiantly queer, successfully led the way for many LGBT scenes throughout the UK.
The streets is facing green, every color sign for the beauty. Like fire, the star shines brighter. West of the wire, we're living for free. The night fades away, we hold on to the beat. This world of acceptance beyond the reach.
But Manchester took the word queer with all its negativity and used it positively, de-shaming the lives of those lost to HIV and those living with the illness by taking to the streets, by celebrating and raising awareness just like it had done protesting against Clause 28. With a colourful parade through the streets of Manchester and a more progressive message about HIV. The parade culminated in what Divine David called the most glamorous car park of the Western Hemisphere.
It gives me great pleasure to be amongst you, even more pleasure to look at you, some more than others. Did you do the march? Did you? I missed you. But then again, you do look the type that just merges in. Can I say to those two boys over there, can you see them dancing on the rooftop? Aren't they marvellous? Go the whole hog! Take your clothes off!
Performers such as the Divine David happily paraded his unique style of performance around the streets of Manchester, whilst at the same time hosting his own TV show. Chloe Poems, the character developed by poet Jerry Potter, also breaking through the pink ceiling with her anarcho drag performances. Both artists presented their astute, acerbic observations and commentary on politics and what queer really meant.
So, what is this thing called gay, and who is it for? This is for the queers who first answered the clarion call. Those magnificent men who were drag queens, breaking rules and breaking nails by throwing bricks at Stonewall. This is for their sparkle. This is for their spangle. This is for those who wore the pink triangle. This is for the slogan, no surrender, for every diesel, dyke and lipstick lesbian avenger. This is for the complex, the confident and the now, and for all those wonderful times cruising Manchester's Canal. This is for the bitter, this is for the sweet, this is for all of you who love an anal treat. This isn't for Judy Garland, Shirley Bassey, or Madonna. This is for the families who have never pretended. This is for the forgiving and the offended. This is for coming through the violence and hate. This is for the end of Clause 28. This is for the isolated, and this is for the crowd. And this is Chloe Poems, and why I'm out and proud. Thank you very much. Good night.
Use of the word queer was and still is polarising in the LGBT community. Some reclaiming it as an honour, a political statement and subversive declaration, but others seeing it as a hateful, homophobic term, reminding them of the past when it had been used as an insult for many decades, culminating with the stigma of HIV that had been laid totally at the feet of the gay community. A reminder of the isolation and blame endured by many at that time. Queer culture was, as usual, on the march in the avant-garde, most notably with an exhibition of artist, filmmaker and activist Derek Jarman at Manchester City Art Gallery in 1992. However, it wasn't the art inside the gallery that caused the consternation, but the exhibition title, Queer, boldly promoted across the exterior of the gallery for everyone on the 192 to Longsight to see.
I feel very uncomfortable as well with the term queer. I don't know why. It seems to be very trendy at the moment to call like gay men queer. I don't think I'm queer in any sense of the word. I think the society that I live in is queer and sick.
Queer has come back into if you like, gay politics. Through various political groups in America and now here. I personally use it because it was just the word you'd hate to have been called when you were 18 in the 50s, and therefore to be able to say, look, I'm a queer artist, is a sort of triumph. It wouldn't have been possible in those days. If anyone suggested one was queer when I was 18, I would have run a mile and say, no, I'm not, but I am.
I think the queer I know, the queer I understand, certainly comes from Manchester. Certainly a lot of it comes from the rave scene, certainly a lot from Paradise Factory. The queer I know is slightly what queer should be, formless, malleable, and everybody's welcome, as long as everybody's okay with everybody else. And that's what it meant to me. I think we're edging towards a slightly more authoritative place, and that's the way things go.
Yeah, I'm Nigel Dawson. I was videoing various clubs back in the 90s, Danceteria, Strange Ways, Bit of Flesh. Manchester was a very interesting and vibrant scene, I would say, back then. Both in people's politics, attitudes, dress sense and just behaviour. My main memories, I would say, is just the way people really got into the night out. It was an event. And some of these club nights, we're not talking 2-3 hours, we're talking days. You know, you could go on a Friday, you could be out till Monday morning for a bank holiday, it just didn't stop. And you could tap into that sort of clubbing any time of the day and night and it would still be just full on in your face. Danceteria really had an interesting crowd. At one stage we were actually busing people in from Liverpool to the club. I mean, I've got footage of people queuing, complaining of being sat outside in the cold, waiting for over an hour just to get in the place. And they'd be from Glasgow or Birmingham, London even. And it just astounded me that people were travelling hundreds of miles just to come to some seedy little back street club. You know, this wasn't some huge venue, it was just basically an old school 60s pub with a few fancy lights on it. The DJs really went to town. There was some superb DJ like Donna, who was now deceased, sadly. It was sort of like a secret club. It was like you had to be in the know to really know it existed, partially because it opened so late. I think it started 2-3 in the morning, and then I think initially it went until 9, and then later on it was midday, then eventually it just kept going on and on and on, Saturday, Sunday, in towards Monday. It was a very unusual time though. You know, you could just decide I'm going to pop out at 5 in the morning and just land in this amazing club space where you could barely see your way in with the smoke or the sweat or even just the sweat dripping off the ceiling because there were all those ceilings. You had all sorts of people, all ages of people, a lot of youngsters, which I sort of was at the time. But you used to have Tony Dean, who was a character around town. He was a man who would go out wearing a tuxedo, generally little cigarettes in his holder, drinking I think a lager from a champagne glass. He'd be going out 3, 4, 5 in the morning and he'd still be dancing around. How he found the energy, I have no idea. I mean, the gentleman who I believe is still going, he must be in his 80s now, and he was probably in his 60s then. I think Tony Dean's going to see us all out. Apparently he's still living at large, and you know, he was so well known. He had a habit of handing out poetry to everyone he met. I've still got reams of his poems that he gave me from years ago, and I'm sure there's hundreds of people that end up watching your programme who will say the same. Very nice gentleman, always had time for you. Very fond times, fond remembered days.
You ecstasy, you me.
Success of Manto's led them to begin after clubs, breakfast clubs, parties after the number one closed. And I think that's when Peter and Carol really realised that there was the possibility of there being maybe a new and bigger club that was playing this house music. And this is, I think, where the idea for Paradise Factory came from. And of course, as soon as Paradise opened, then Manto's was the natural place to go afterwards for the breakfast club. And so really all of these things built on top of each other. It was the music, it was the city council, it was the addition of ecstasy and other things. And the whole vibe, the whole creativity seemed to lead in one direction to make Manchester one of the most exciting and vibrant places to go clubbing in the early 1990s.
The Hacienda's legacy gave way to Peter Dalton's night at Paradise Factory. That was amazing. It was great to go somewhere and dress up and express ourselves once more.
In 1993, the owners of Manto surprised us once more by opening the club Paradise Factory, formerly the headquarters of Factory Records. They took on this iconic 3-storey building and in honour of Wilson's legacy created a fresh industrial style club reminiscent of his hacienda.
Around January 1993, there was a rumour going around that Factory Records was about to go into liquidation. At that time, we were doing really well. The bar wasn't big enough. We had a huge crowd of people, great followers that everybody was going to Flesh once a month. Carol actually came up with the idea, why don't we buy Factory Records headquarters and turn it into a club? Just like that, it happened. We literally put an offer in that was accepted and the deal was done subject to licensing. In May 1993, Paradise Factory was born. So the opening night, we'd done our groundwork pretty well. We knew that we weren't going to have any trouble filling the club for the opening party. It was a midweek night. It was a Thursday night, so it wasn't a weekend night. We somehow managed to get a queue going all the way down Charles Street, wrapping around the corner onto Oxford Road. It was a perfect crowd. We knew straight away that we'd hit on something pretty special, because we didn't just want a gay club. We wanted a club where gay people could bring their friends. We could just have a great party every time we opened. It didn't matter what your sexuality was.
The opening night felt like a Hollywood premiere, with Manchester's stylerati and celebs in attendance. Whilst the queue stretched around the block, the divine David probed them with questions that only David could get away with.
Would you like to be interviewed? This gay man here. Are you looking for Mr. Right tonight? Are you looking for Mr. Right?
No, Mr. Wrong.
Mr. Wrong. Why do you like Mr. Wrong?
Mr. Wrong's going to be a bad boy, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah, and he's in there actually. You're actually taking part in history. Everybody looks like they're withdrawing from methadone, are you?
With the help of Leeds DJs, trannies with an attitude dragged up as female officers, the traffic was stopped on Prince Street for the arrival of Joan Collins lookalike, seated in a white limousine and driven through the huge barn-like doors to open the proceedings. Liberace, eat your heart out. With the paint literally still wet, the clubbers were greeted with performances, including a muscle man with a snake. DJ and S-Express producer Mark Moore pumped up the music, and from this moment it was clear that Paradise Factory was going to be something special and something big. A section of the second floor had been taken out, turning it into a prime viewing spot where those taking a break could still hear the music whilst, no doubt, eyeing the talent below. The top floor that had once been the Factory Records meeting room with the infamous suspended table was turned into another dance floor.
Drag queens in clubland at the time were very in vogue. Drag clubbing became more flamboyant and excessive all over the UK. Everyone wanted drag queens. Drag was an internal part, making a club a success during the 90s. There was door whores, DJs, drag queens dancing on bars. We were everywhere. It was so exciting to be part of the club scene. We were either there to shock, entertain, or simply provide glamour, or just show off. We were celebrated often hearing the other clubbers shouting our names, which was funny. We're free to be Beehive, Gina Love. And of course, Gina, she used to do all that exciting shaking about, which has really got the kids going. And I just stood there pouting. It doesn't matter, I'm just ad-libbing, it makes it fun.
Friday nights were given over to a gay woman-only night called Woman's Own. The weekend queues around the block were reminiscent of the Studio 54 nights in New York, dressed and undressed to impress and clutching tightly to your pearls just in case the glamorous Elton, Angel, Lee, Divine David and co on the door refused you entry. We used to get people to kiss each other or tell us what gay magazines they read, and if they didn't know any, they didn't get in. And just like Studio 54, the clubbers spilled out onto the streets, the drag queens no doubt shocking and in some cases titillating the waiting cabbies.
Paradise Factory became like a sort of giant playground / playroom really, where being yourself was just what you could be and happily be, again aided by a lot of chemically infused gorgeousness. There was a sense where you became, and this is going to sound mawkish, but I don't mean it to. This is my experience, where you became you because of it all. So of course you're going to be more defined you if you're happy where you are, if you're comfortable, and more importantly, if you feel safe where you are. And I mean sort of subculturally safe as well as just, culturally safe. I mean, counterculturally safe. And I felt incredibly counterculturally safe in Paradise Factory. And with that safety comes a strengthening, an emboldening of confidence, which you only get when you're like that, when you know that you're part of something which is wild and free and madly creative. And of course, I was Chloe Poems then, and I did a lot of poems about about raving and about being off your head. Because I mean, Chloe was. I always say Chloe was a punk creation, and of course, in some ways, she was. I'm not a punk rocker, but I certainly know that world and the Liverpool world of that. So there's an anarcho sense of Chloe in there, but she was a raver. She was an anarcho raver, a punk raver, and that was really what. So things like the Paradise Factory and environments like the Paradise Factory were perfect places for her to be exactly that, a creative punk raver. And I think, because people were my age and older, and they'd been part of that sort of punk new wave scene.
We would also get involved with things like Mr. Gay UK, but we did it very much in a Paradise way. So we would have Divine David would host that.
The alternative round of Mr. Gay UK was also held at the club, hosted by Divine David, along with me and Coco and our clapometer.
The one and only Jonathan Thomason. It's lovely to see you, and you're unemployed, which I totally agree with. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do have a job, give it up, sign on, don't pay bills and never work. Who will be crowned this evening the winner of the Paradise Factory's heat of Mr. Gay UK 1994? Angel, Coco, I'd like each of you got heavily involved in the coronation ceremony. Are you ready? It's Ian! Ian Shepherd, he's 24, he's 5'8" inches, he weighs 11 stone, he's very, very beautiful.
A feast of arse and attitude, the winner was crowned and given an 8-inch rubber dildo as his regal staff. Another night called Divinity was organised by rubber and leather fetish admirers. Everything from PVC nuns to Japanese girls in plastic faux police costumes, whatever took your fancy.
Paradise Factory does me so good.
The one that springs to mind the most will be Trade, that we would do once a month. It wasn't just a gay club, the whole kind of the queer identity thing. We would just get a bunch of people would come down in drag on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Not as a group, just in 1-1-2s with their friends. We do little fetish nights, we do S&M nights. We were constantly pushing the boat out, but we didn't realise at the time there was no kind of master plan. It wasn't part of a big scheme to kind of push a queer agenda or some kind of political agenda. It was just happened organically in that.
At this time, the owners also embarked on creating their own record label, Out on Vinyl. Their premiere release was Free, Gay and Happy by the Coming Out crew, who flew in from New York to perform their track live at Paradise. Free, Gay and Happy perfectly captured the anything is possible queer atmosphere of the time and quickly became the anthem that was to be heard across gay clubs and prides all around the world. Manchester was now firmly on the map as a worldwide destination for gay travellers, and Canal Street, or Anal Treat as it was known by some of its regulars, became fully entrenched in the mainstream media, publicised by programmes such as Queer as Folk. In 1992, the Boddington's Festival of Television and the Arts, in association with the regional ITV channel Granada, also joined up in promoting queer culture. Granada TV produced a tongue-in-cheek tea time poke at daytime telly, Oh What a Lovely Day. Now, I was part of the cast, and it was made up of local drag queens. Me, Angel Valentine, Coco and Bambi. I played the lead based on Dear Judy Finnegan, and David Hoyle as the scary archetypal TV producer. Whilst over in the Cream Tent, up-and-coming LGBT performers, also I was part of that with Killer Disco and our show Fame. We felt like we were going to live forever, alongside some of our drag favourites, Lily Savage. Manchester was definitely starting to tune in and tune on to this exciting queer scene.
From where Manchester was in 1990 when we opened, we had an equal age of consent. We've got gay marriage, we had civil partnerships. In a lot of ways, I felt that we'd done our job. It was no longer somewhere that I wanted to go out and party in every night. I didn't want to be up all night at weekends till 9 a.m. on the dance floors, keeping control of things. I'd done it for such a long time. But at the same time, I felt that what we'd achieved in terms of social acceptance and equality, I thought we were pretty much there. The village had turned into a different kind of place. Some people would say it was a victim of its own success. Some people would say it was down to queer as folk attracting more and more straight people down there. Some people would blame it on hen parties. But really, the way I saw it is that everything that we've been fighting for almost 20 years, for equality and acceptance and freedom to do what you want, where you want, with who you want, we got there. And it was clear to me that the way the village was going to go, in terms of the crowd it would appeal to and the direction it was going to go in, it had to embrace a wider society. It couldn't just be continue to attract just gay people and keep the straights out and it's not for you, because we spent 15 years at Paradise breaking down those barriers and making a club and at Manto making spaces that were so inclusive and such fun that everybody wanted to go. You can't suddenly turn around and say, well, we want to still feel special and we don't want anybody else coming and spoiling our party. You can't have that as well. So I thought that was a good time for me to bow out. And since then, the village is bumming along, still in the same kind of way. There's nothing groundbreaking happening there. There's nothing new or interesting coming along. It's just catering for a gay stroke mixed crowd. The more interesting thing is in the fringe events that happen, the one-off events that have nothing to do with the village. They don't need to be in the village and they shouldn't be in the village. And I think that's where the future's going to go. It's going to be more of those kind of things.
Sadly, Carol Ainscough died in 2013, but she and Peter Dalton had already made a huge impact on gay clubbing and the LGBT scene, not just in Manchester, but one that was echoed across the UK, helping other cities establish their own gay villages and prides. The identities that people took on, gay, queer, whatever, turned the next page into LGBTQI culture, with the members of the community once more adopting their own identity, their own politics, their own pronouns, and further adventures in clubs such as Homo Electric and Bollocks.
Hi, my name's Kath McDermott and I've been DJing around Manchester for over 30 years now in queer clubs. I first started at a night in Liverpool and then soon became a resident at Flesh at the Hacienda. I used to go to clubs like Robo Disco, Friends and Family, Electric Chair, where the music was more diverse and the crowd was more diverse as well. And that's where I met Ryan Minchin, who told me one month that him and Luke Una wanted to set up a night called Homo Electric, which would be a queer party but open to everyone, as long as they came with the right attitude. And so we started that on a Thursday. It was quite a small affair in the backstreet old school lesbian club Follies. You know, that had quite a history to it, so it was brilliant taking that over. I loved that venue. Ryan used to do an amazing Homo Electric Chronicle, which was our manifesto. And that was a really heady, incredible time, I think, for queer Manchester. Homo Electric started getting bigger. We moved to Chains next door, which had been Rockies, and it just became more and more successful over time. And then clubs like Bollocks followed in our footsteps in the same venue, more of an indie alternative music night, but still very much countercultural and underground and brilliant community as well. There was clubs like Club Brenda going on in Salford, which was really important, run by Jane Compton. And there was creative hives going on all around Manchester at this point. And I think they were all very queer in their essence, rather than being sort of gay nights or LGBTQ nights. They were all inclusive, underground, and a lot of fun.
Well, we're here in District Bar, New York, New York. Here is Billy Smart, and here is Tiger. Hi. I remember the first time I saw you and that was in Heroes.
1979.
About 1979. You came in a pair of like camp shorts, and you had your hair in a Fred Perry wedge, and you had 4 hankies on the left hand side and 5 hankies on the right. Anthony, Tiger. This is about Mint, the community, which has become quite integral to a lot of our members and got us through some difficult times. And it started here.
Yeah, this used to just be, the New York was just this bar. And then Glenn Stevens and his brother made the extension in 1986. And I used to work upstairs in the bar. I worked on the scene 25 years. And it was in them days in the like 70s and 80s where the community was a lot smaller.
How did you come up, with the idea of Mint, and why?
I ended up starting my Mint group 10 years ago. The reason was, at the time, the door policy of the village had sort of changed. And it was like our generation wasn't really welcome. We built this fucking street. Been here for 20 years.
I've got to be honest with you, for me, that was it.
So I set up Mint initially thinking that it was just going to be like 300 of my mates and we'd just organise little events. And if there was any profit, we'd give it to one of the charities, especially George House Trust or the Albert Kennedy Trust that was looking out for the kids that were homeless. It was mainly to do something for the older crowd that was sort of being pushed out of the village. And it was that kind of crowd that I was trying to go for and bring them together, you know, and have a party.
Have a party. And that's it, have a party. Any excuse for a party.
I thought, like, with the name Mint, it was like Manchester in 93. Plus, it's like, means in Manchester, everything's good. You know, we're just Mint people.
Yeah.
So I ended up calling it Mint because it was like a short name that everyone could remember. So I was talking to Tracy and I was saying, I'm going to start a group. And then it was like the 70s and the 80s crowd coming in saying, hey, what about us? You know, we're here too. It's like it's all about the 90s. So we ended up that we got sort of like 3,000 members within like 2-3 weeks. My friends all added like the history of Manchester, old photos of our time on the scene. Then the group sort of like just exploded.
What was really, really magnificent about the whole idea of Mint is the way that it did bring people back and reconnected. And it gave older people purpose. They felt, you know, were wanted. I can only applaud you for that, for bringing us all together. And during COVID,
yeah,
oh my God,
that was
I think it was a lifeline. It helped people with their mental health. I think what's really important about Mint is the events and the people that were involved in that made it such a success.
So I did one initially upstairs in the New York, and while I was stood on the door, Mark Wallace was out in the village and came past and he was like, what's this? And I said, oh, I've just started a night to bring the older crowd together, so we've got somewhere to go. So Mark was saying, oh, maybe I could do some flyers and stuff for you. And so then Mark came in the club, took a few pictures. I was like, well, I'm not really bothered about the money. It's more about bringing our community and keeping them together. So he says, well, I think you need to do it all for charity. So me and Mark never took any money for doing anything.
I think something that was done, which was really, really sharp, is the way that you brought back the old style music.
Well, at the time, the village used to just play pop, and we never really had anywhere to go or do anything. The older crowd. Well, when I say older crowd, it's like the 40s, 50s. And it was like bringing that music. It was like the golden age.
Yeah.
And it was like going out into a club back in the 80s.
I think I found it, some of the music, it was really emotional because it actually took me back to times where I could see faces where I was, time of your life. And I think that is what a lot of people have said. It sort of renewed, in a way, your youth. I think the businesses began to realise, and the older crowd were starting to come out and felt comfortable. And, if you were older, you were very self-conscious. There was no need to be self-conscious in any of them events. And then that brought a group of people together. And
we had good DJs. Paulette was one of them when she first came back from Ibiza. We had K-Class, Alistair Whitehead, he did. Tim Lennox as well came and did an event for us, which was bringing like the old number one crowd back together, because it was Tim who started all the house music really on the gay scene. So we used to have Gavinia, that was one of my friends from London, who used to be one of the number oneers, and then him and Mark Jones were like the resident DJs, because everybody knows Mark. Mark knows all the old tunes from like way back when, so he knows all that music leading up to the house. And then we'd have like a proper hardcore DJ on to end the night.
This wasn't just about the events, it was about giving something back to our community. You raise an amazing amount of money.
We've done over 25 grand for cancer charities, HIV charities. So we used to donate as well to the Albert Kennedy Trust, which was for all the homeless kids that were booted out of the house because they were trans or they were gay.
It's about keeping mint fresh. Yeah, I like that. Fresh mint. Thank you for staying with us.
Adios, chicos. See you in the summer.
I always thought it was never going to end, and of course they do end. But things always pass on and through and within. Striations of gorge, if you know what I mean, will never ever end. And I think what if you're the B of the band, which I think Paradise Factory was, then you've got a lot to be proud of.
What happened with the Canal Street was that the two scenes, we came from the underground and we came onto the street. It just didn't matter anymore. We all mixed together. And I think for me, what was brilliant about Paradise Factory was it sort of like underpinned what we've been waiting for such a long time. And the level of creativity, the DJs, the staff that worked there were amazing as well. We've got to take everything from the door staff. I was just proud. I was out and I was proud. I'd always been out, I'd always been proud, but I was really proud now.